Off the Record by IVE musically starts with a distorted sample of Memory, a 1981 show tune composed by Andrew Lloyd Webber. The original song is lyrically based on poems by T.S. Eliot. Memory, funnily enough, was made for Cats the Musical. In the musical, the song is primarily sung by Grizabella, a character who first appears in the production to be a shell of who and what she formerly was. The Jellicle tribe of cats remembers Grizabella as a young and beautiful cat which most envied. Many years later, Grizabella returns and sings Memory, recounting the time where she used to be glamorous and how decrepit she has become. I remember the time I knew what happiness was. Let the memory live again. Daylight. I must wait for the sunrise. I must think of a new life. I mustn't give in. When the dawn comes, tonight will be a memory too, and a new day will begin. And finally, perhaps the most famous line of the song, touch me. It's so easy to leave me, all alone with the memories of my days in the sun. If you touch me, you'll understand what happiness is. Look, a new day has begun. Eugen echoes a similar sentiment in the bridge of Off the Record. Love me, hurry, go, and leave me, leave me. Day by day, killing, healing, just stay, she sings. We kind of get the same sentiment of yearning and wishing for things to remain or stay as they are or were in some capacity. Telling the subject of the story to hurry and leave, though, is a bit of a stark contrast from the rest of Off the Record, which is a song that details a moment that will never end, or should never end. This night that's off the record, everything is said and done without judgment. It's time, it's 2 a.m. I have been waiting for this moment, the moment where they can speak honestly, revealing their thoughts that others wouldn't even be able to guess that that's something they think about. It's very interesting though that the music video for Off the Record takes place as much in the daytime as it does at night. The memory interpolation, as far as I can tell, does not exist anywhere else on the song except for the very beginning. That's a very conscious musical choice to make, and certainly one that feels intentional. It's there for a reason, maybe reflective of what's about to be shown and discussed in this song. I know there's a sizable crowd of people who show up to videos like these to say it's not that deep or it's not that serious. One, it is that serious to me, and actually, Off the Record goes to pretty great lengths conveying this conceptual message of loneliness and isolation. The musical reference to Memory, the video's reference to the film Castaway on the Moon, which I'll talk about later, this song and the IVE Mine album as an extension of it dwells a lot on the concept of loneliness and introspection caused by isolation. All three releases from this album are surprisingly introspective when considering the time of IVE's career that they were released. I think Off the Record and its media references are incredibly intentional in that way, which is what I want to talk with you about today. With all of that being said, I want to start by talking about the musical Cats. Specifically the moment where Grizabella begins to sing Memory. She returns to the Jellicle tribe of cats as an old and mangy cat, a far cry image of the beautiful and glamorous cat she was in her youth. The other cats in the Jellicle tribe are initially repulsed by her. They can't even look at her. Their backs are turned as she enters and begins to sing Memory. It isn't until Grizabella reaches the climax of the song that we see every cat now looking at her as Grizabella is practically wailing, recounting what life has been like for her all this time. You begin to feel what Grizabella has been feeling all these years, the sadness and despair that comes after the beauty and glamour have gone away. This is also what IVE Mine, the album, seems to be about to me narratively. This is IVE returning to the real world, coming down from the glamour of their debut, but nobody is there for them. Nobody is looking at them. The world has seemingly turned their backs on them, or IVE themselves have shut everybody off. Once again, Off the Record samples the most famous line of Memory, the line of the song where Grizabella says that if you touch her, by understanding how much agony she has been in all this time, by knowing of her desperation, you can literally see and feel what happiness is by comparison. That's a big message, especially for IVE, who at this point in their career had certainly been through the throes of fame and celebrity. Like the song Memory itself, most of Cats the Musical was inspired by the works of T.S. Eliot. Notably, the entire musical is based off of Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, which is a collection of poems that generally discusses the psychology and sociology of cats in the human world. The character Grizabella is not from this series of work though, and is instead inspired by another T.S. Eliot poem, Rhapsody on a Windy Night. This poem is generally thought to represent the feelings of despair and hopelessness that came from living through World War I. Grizabella is based off of the fallen woman in this story, who is almost entirely consumed by thoughts and feelings of how pointless life is in the wake of living through such a traumatic period of history. The fallen woman in this story is corrupted by the despair she feels about her own life and the world around her. Life has become so fragile in her eyes due to the environment she's been living in. It's slowly driven her mad as even street lamps begin to talk to her. Connecting the story of the fallen woman to Grizabella and then once more to IVE in this Off the off-the-record night, a disturbing connection is made here, that their experiences as an idol group together must have turned them into the fallen woman, into Grisabella, who sings Memory. Time plays a significant role in the Rhapsody, starting at 12 a.m. and finishing at 4 a.m. The off-the-record night begins at 2 a.m., as Wan Young mentions as the very first line of the song. The section past 2 a.m. in Rhapsody on a Windy Night reads as follows. 2:30. The street lamp said, "Remark the cat which flattens itself in the gutter, slips out its tongue and devours a morsel of rancid butter." So the hand of a child, automatic, slipped out and pocketed a toy that was running along the quay. I could see nothing behind that child's eye. I have seen eyes in the street, trying to peer through lighted shutters, and a crab, one afternoon in a pool. An old crab with barnacles on his back gripped the end of a stick which I held him. While the section about the cat seems like the obvious choice in connection to the musical, I think the most significant part about the 2 a.m. section of this poem in relationship to both Off the Record and Cats is actually the crab. The crab is old and near death, whether it be of old age or the stick the fallen woman is trying to prod him with. Nevertheless, and what I think is notable about this part is that the crab is attempting to fight back. I think this is representative of the fallen woman's feelings about life as well. In her desperation, she looks to her surroundings, she looks to the children, to the dead cat on the street, and can't help but see hopelessness in everything. Still, she's driving herself insane trying to find meaning in life, but the meaning resists her in the same way that the crab is resisting her. It's old, barnacles cover its back, it should be easy to admit defeat, but it still wants to live. The crab still resists her. It evades her current understanding of how pointless life is at this moment in time. Why does the crab resist her? Why does it want to live? Ive portrays themselves as this fallen woman in both Either Way and Off the Record. They're now in a world that is devoid of meaning to them. The world has turned their backs on them, and no matter what they do or where they go, nothing and no one is there for them. The party has already happened, the restaurant is already closed. In this Off the Record night, nobody looks at them, nobody sees them, yet they seem to be finding meaning in that. They seem like they want to be alone in this Off the Record night that is continuously happening because they want it to be that way. Perhaps it should just be one moment that they get to experience. The come down after their debut should have been a brief pause, but now that they're here, they don't want to go to sleep. They want to find a way to make this feeling last forever, but that doesn't seem to be what's in store for them. It seems like Ive, as aware of themselves as ever, know that this is a period of their life that they shouldn't enjoy living in. I think that may be why we see so many apples throughout the entire video, literally almost every scene falling everywhere. There's a direct mention of the forbidden fruit in the second verse. This is something Ive knows that they shouldn't be doing, but can't help but indulge in the feeling of this moment. The despair one might feel of being completely abandoned is something Ive revels in after everything they've been through in the public eye. They want to find a way to make this feeling last more than just one night. It should be off the record all the time. We see Iso planting her own forbidden fruit and praying that it grows, praying that this moment of peace won't come to an end. This fleeting moment of being alone, represented as a forbidden fruit, of course seems like they're eventually going to have to realize that they can't be alone forever, whether it be by the meaning of being alone dying out or something else. Taking things back to Rhapsody on a Windy Night, things have to change. And there are many, many different outcomes regarding the crab that could happen. The crab could lose its strength, the fallen woman could decide it's not worth it and decide not to kill the crab, but either way, the crab has to die. Change means the crab has to die eventually. The meaning of life that resists the fallen woman will eventually relinquish itself to change, and so the off-the-record night can't last forever. The sun will rise eventually, and with that kind of change, perhaps a new and developed perspective on life will come with it, a new understanding that can hopefully lead them away from despair. A change in perspective on the despair one feels is the through line between all of the media references in Off the Record. Notably, and one I haven't mentioned yet, is Off the Record's visual reference to the 2009 film Castaway on the Moon. I guess this will somewhat spoil the film if you haven't watched it, but I would say, like most Korean films, it's not really anything that could be spoiled that's intended to be taken away from the film, but rather the feeling and understanding all of it inspires. That being said, if you do want to watch the film completely blind, you can skip to the next section of this video. Castaway on the Moon first introduces us to the character Sunggung, a man living in Korea who has become overwhelmed by debt and an approaching bankruptcy. In his desperation, he decides to take his own life by jumping off of a bridge. Instead of dying, Sunggung is washed ashore on an island in the middle of the Han River. On this island, we learn that he can't swim. Sunggung, in trying to escape the troubles of his previous life, has ended up in a kind of in-between situation where he's trapped in a new predicament with the troubles of his old life all around him. Sunggung has to learn how to survive on the island with no hopes of escaping for the time being. At the same time as Sunggung is adjusting to life on the island, the second main character, Jungyeon, is an isolationist who stays in her room and spends all of her time on the internet. With the camera she uses to take pictures of the moon, Jungyeon spots Sunggung and they begin to talk to each other. Jungyeon writes messages in bottles, and Sungung responds to them in turn by writing them on the sand. While they do have given names, both characters are credited by their last name, which is both Kim. In the credits, the main characters are listed as male Kim and female Kim. This comes to represent the Korean name of the film, Kimchi Pyeorgi, or Castaway Kim. Both of them are castaways in their own right, having shut themselves off from the rest of society. As we progress through the story, Sungung has begun to really enjoy life on the island, free from the worries of his old life, but as a bad storm hits the island, the shelter and farm he built for himself blows away by the next morning. A rescue team discovers him on the island, and Sungung is forcibly brought back to his old life. He begs and pleads with the officers to let him stay, that he won't do anything wrong if left on the island. In the moment he is brought back, Sungung decides to travel to the 63 building to jump off of it, which is a tower that overlooks the Han River where he was trapped. Jungyeon was witness to the police recovering Sungung and anticipates he's going to try and take his life again. She makes the decision to go outside of the house in the daytime despite her severe social withdrawal problems, and runs frantically through the streets of Seoul to find him. She finally finds the bus he's on, boards it, and introduces herself to him. The both of them just stare at each other in silence, smiling and then crying. And that's how the film ends. The two of them finally meet each other in person and, as a consequence, help each other out of their problems of isolation. They were able to help each other not be castaways anymore, for however different their problems were to them personally, they ultimately ended up going through the exact same thing, the experience of being isolated from the rest of society as a result of some kind of desperation. So, synthesizing all of these media references together, Off the Record seems to be centrally about the members dealing with the aftermath of this colossal debut they had in real time. With the poem, musical, and film's narratives about isolation and mind, it seems to all work to portray how the members felt isolated and trapped in their own unique ways, even though they were and are living almost the exact same life. Either way represents this in the break in the music video, which literally shows them going through the exact same struggles. Despite how isolating it feels to have your personal image attacked, there seems to be a comfort they find in understanding that the idol versions of all 6 of them are being ridiculed in the same way. Wonyoung and Liz represent the castaways in full reference to the film. Wonyoung is Jungyeon stuck in her room and taking pictures of the people she sees outside, and Liz is Sungung riding around town in the duck boat. Off the Record seems to reference Castaway on the Moon to represent the moment they start to realize that all of them are going through these same struggles, again as outlined in the Either Way music video, but it is interesting that they chose to use this film to outline the idea. Like Sungung living on the island, I have come to cherish this moment of isolation from the life they had before. They revel in this time of loneliness and the lack of expectations that come with it. The Off the Record night is portrayed as the moment the characters of Castaway on the Moon are still castaways, which again seems to signal that they'll eventually have to pull themselves out of it, no matter how much they enjoy being in isolation. In a similar way to the storm causing the rescue team to find Sungung, the crab from Rhapsody on a Windy Night eventually having to die, and Grisabella coming to accept and love herself from within, there's always going to come a change that completely shifts your perspective away from the despair you feel. It's hope, right? That's what Off the Record seems to be about in its entirety, with all of its media references in mind. Of course, desperation has to end at some point, as you never truly stay the same forever. A fundamental change in perspective is what saves all of our characters in these stories. The lowest moment of vulnerability is what allows the hope of change to come. I've Mind the album functions narratively as that low moment, assuming and reconciling with all of the worst aspects of their career so far. Still to this day, more than a year later, Off the Record is one of the most narratively expansive releases in K-pop. It's kind of overlooked in IVE's discography so far, but genuinely represents the best of this group's potential in my opinion. There is so much to work with here, and as of right now, this is my understanding of the release. Thank you for watching this. If you did, let me know what you think about this, if there's another reference or idea you have with all of this in mind, and so on. Yeah, thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.